Hi, my name is Lila Bashan. I'm a USAID Foreign Service Officer, but this interview and everything we talk about is all of our own personal views. I'm so lucky to be joined today by Erica King, the Cultural Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy here in Yerevan. Thank you, Erica, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, and so Erica and I actually first met in Dushanbe, Tajikistan, when we were both working at the embassy there. So that's one of the fun things about the Foreign Service is you end up meeting people again halfway around the world. Or I guess actually Yerevan and Dushanbe are kind
pretty
of close. Yeah, pretty close. Yeah. But we are here to talk about you and your career path in international relations. So can you just explain briefly what you do at the embassy?
Yes, so in this role as the Cultural Affairs Officer, I advise the ambassador, the deputy chief of mission, and the rest of the mission on education issues, in particular English language education, using my job and resources to bring American culture to Armenian audiences, and also sports diplomacy, and a big part of the portfolio as well as exchanges. So sending young Armenians or young Armenian professionals to the United States for things like Fulbright or the International Visitors Leadership Program. And then also we have a few really bright Americans coming to Armenia as well, working in the higher institutions here, doing research and teaching.
Cool. And I have to say that it always seems to me the Cultural Affairs Officer in the Public Affairs section at the embassy has like one of the coolest jobs at the embassy. Yeah, it always seems that way.
It does. It feels really awesome to speak to all different parts of Armenian society, whether it be students, whether it be professionals, members of parliament, business owners. So it's just a wonderful opportunity to really dive deeply into Armenian society.
Well, and can you talk a little bit about your path and why you wanted to have a job in international relations in the first place, and then how you actually got started on your journey?
Yeah, I think about my career in the Foreign Service. I've been in for 7 years now, and I think that I'm very lucky. In my family, it's either you join the military or you become a nurse. That seems to be the two trends in my family. And I just started to think, what else is out there? Both of those, professions in my family, really instilled, this sense of public service and helping out other people. And it's interesting because my father, while serving in the U.S. Air Force, he met my mom in the Philippines.
Wow.
And so she came to the U.S. and had to study for her citizenship exam.
Oh, wow.
And I was very young at the time, probably in kindergarten or first grade. And she was repeating the question over and over to herself, who's the first president of the United States? And I remember yelling out, George Washington! And, she smiled and remembered that, thankfully I was correct with the answer. And they actually asked her that question in her interview. So, and she got it right. And I just remember growing up and that moment, it was if I could help other people in the world understand U.S. culture, our traditions, our values, then that would really be a life worth living.
Wow, that's so neat. So from kindergarten, your mom studying for her citizenship. That's amazing.
It's the one distinct moment that I remember from my childhood that was related to the Foreign Service in my career. Later on in life at the University of Texas at Austin, where I studied for my bachelor's degree, we had a diplomat in residence there. So it was it's traditionally a senior Foreign Service officer or former ambassador who guides young people and gives advice about careers in the Foreign Service. And we had just happened to have one there, Ambassador Engel, I still remember. And he was holding kind of an information session.
Oh, wow.
And it was something that I was, the Foreign Service I was familiar with, but I didn't know exactly
Yeah.
what Foreign Service officers did. But he was offering free pizza.
Oh, okay. So that's good motivation to go check it out.
So, as a young, poor college student, I always say I came for the pizza, I stayed for the career.
And what were you studying at the time?
I was studying for a bachelor's in government.
Oh, okay.
At that time, UT Austin didn't have their international relations department, which they have now, which I'm like, what?
Wow.
But it was very wonderful to be in the government program. And so it basically meant that I took less like statistics and economic course than a traditional political science degree. Which was fun for me because I'm not that great of a math person. And so, but yeah, really enjoyed it, really learned about our internal government system, comparative politics, and then branched out and coupled that major with a history minor,
Oh, wow.
really
That's
studying, minority populations in the United States and how they've come and influenced our society today.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
And so I'm picturing like 19-year-old Erica eating her free pizza, being like, okay, the Foreign Service sounds like an awesome career opportunity.
Right.
How did you go from eating the free pizza to being 7 years into a career as a diplomat?
Well, so after I finished my free pizza, Ambassador Engel had these pamphlets that talked about different fellowship opportunities. And one was the Wrangell Fellowship and one was the Pickering Fellowship. And these are kind of fellowship programs designed to bring more young people outside of the Beltway, outside of the traditional recruitment pool of the Department of State. Programs like the Pickering Fellowship that particularly seeks out students who come from, not the East Coast. I was from Texas. I'm a woman. My father's African American. My mother's Filipino. So I had different life experiences growing up in the military and on military bases, and other opportunities that not every American has the same opportunities. So like when you're thinking about creating a foreign service that represents the entire United States, you got to include different voices.
Totally.
So it was very, so I heard about it there, and it was my freshman year. It was my first semester.
Wow.
And I couldn't apply for the fellowship program until the spring semester of my sophomore year.
Okay.
So what I did was I read the pamphlets, I read the requirements. I decided to set up my freshman year and the fall semester of my sophomore year accomplishing each of those requirements. I think it's good practice for anyone to have a plan.
Yeah.
And that, pamphlet just gave me an outline of things that I could easily accomplish during my tenure at the University of Texas at Austin. And then I applied, got all the, references, and then I made it to the semifinals.
Wow.
And they flew us out to be interviewed in person in D.C.
Wow. Your sophomore year of college.
My sophomore year of college. So I was 19 years old. I flew to D.C. My dad's family is from Baltimore, but we never went to D.C. proper. So this is first time flying into Reagan National, seeing like the Washington Monument. And I was just so enamored with being in our nation's capital, and but I had to do a full oral assessment is what we call it in the Foreign Service. So I had to give a writing sample, a timed writing sample. I had to interview with a panel of people, which included like former ambassadors and professors outside as members of the public. And then I also had to do a group exercise and prove that I could work in a group. And then they didn't let us know until like the next week.
Oh, wow. Because it sounds a lot like the Foreign Service test, except for that you find out right away.
Right.
But for this, did you fly all the way back to Austin while you were waiting to find out? Yeah.
So I packed up. And I was like, wow, I don't know when's the next time I'm going to come back here, you know? And so, flew back to Texas and working in my, work study job, and this email pops up that says that I was chosen in the cohort.
Wow.
And I was just elated.
It gives me goosebumps. Like your life changed with that email. That's amazing.
It did. Because I signed a piece of paper back then in 2008 when I was 19. And I basically committed myself to the Foreign Service because I had to finish my bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
I had to obtain a master's degree.
Yeah.
Which I did at the Corbell School, the University of Denver. And I had to complete a domestic internship at the Department of State, a foreign internship at one of our missions abroad. I had to maintain a certain GPA and take particular classes that the program felt were really relevant to prepare me to be a great Foreign Service officer.
Wow. That's
the normal way to enter the Foreign Service, if there is a normal way, is I believe it's like you have to be at least 20 years old and you have to pass the written test and you have to pass the oral security and medical clearances.
With a bachelor's degree.
With a bachelor's degree. Okay. And so I earned the bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
I had a taste of what the oral was like to get the fellowship, but I was still required to pass the written and the oral assessment. And I'm someone who's very nervous.
Yeah.
So I put off that oral assessment, the official one, as long as I could, because you have to be able to talk about real world experiences. And I felt like, my work study job at UT was only going to take me so far. And I really wanted to get some real life stuff from my first tour under my belt that I could speak to during the assessment.
I was a presidential management fellow, which gets you into the civil service, but I was a State Department civil servant through PMF. And so I was able to skip the written for the Foreign Service and go straight to the orals. And I actually passed as a political officer, but I decided to go with the aid Foreign Service instead. But it's a good point that there are these fellowships where if you can get the fellowship, a lot of times it gives you a leg up for future career opportunities.
Right.
Yeah.
And, being a Pickering Fellow definitely helped push me towards that master's degree. I mean, it was
What did you get it in?
So I got a master's degree in international studies, focusing on development in the former Soviet Union.
Voila.
Here we are. Yeah. I just kind of wanted a very general, qualitative, degree. I wanted to be well-rounded. I didn't want to be so focused. Plus, I didn't want to take those statistics courses. Let's just be real.
Yeah. No, I remember them being a little challenging.
They were very challenging. Yeah. So you gotta know yourself.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. So speaking about knowing yourself, what do you wish you could go back and tell yourself at the beginning of your career that you wish you had known then?
I think, at the very beginning of the career, even though you had this insider's view a little bit being a fellow, I was still nervous about everything, right? Because traveling around the world as my father's dependent when he was in the Air Force, that was the easy bit, right? I just had to go to class. But now it's I'm the person that needs to report to work every morning. I'm the person who's helping move policy. I'm the person who's making the contacts. And I would just tell myself to chill out.
Yeah.
It all worked out.
Yeah.
I think I spent a lot of hours. And young people I talked to here in Armenia or in Tajikistan or the UK where I formerly served, everyone was so worried about getting everything right.
Yeah.
And that me at 19 with that initial plan and having it all laid out, that worked for me at that time. And that was really successful. And it set me on this path. But I could have had more fun.
That's one reason I want to do these interviews and share my experience and my friends' experience, because I felt the same way. And I think most people feel that way starting out, oh my gosh, how is it ever going to all work out? And I'm going to fail and have an awful career. And we're far enough along that now we can look back and be like, no, it works out one way or another. It works out as long as you keep focused and and have faith in yourself. Yeah.
And that's very much like easier said than done. You know, it's true about hindsight. Like, you know, I know everything worked out, but I think that, you know, there were definitely times in my career, especially in my first tour, where I was just too worried and too serious, to the point that it stressed me out.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have fun. And it was like that, you know, you do what you love and you have fun doing it. And I could have had more of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're having fun now.
Yeah. Yerevan's amazing.
But so Yerevan is amazing, and I know we both love living here. Where's somewhere else that you've lived or visited that really stands out in your mind?
I think up until last weekend, it would have been Stockholm, Sweden. I think my husband and I really enjoyed that vacation. We finally learned how each person travels, and we've melded the styles really well at that vacation. We always say that was our best vacation because we really like the museums, especially the Vasa Museum. It's this preserved wooden ship that they kind of built a museum around. It's amazing.
Wow.
And we're both big ABBA fans. ABBA Museum.
Well, and I love that you met your husband during your second tour because it goes to show there's love in the Foreign Service.
There is love in the Foreign Service, and there are male trailing spouses. Yeah. So, and then recently we visited Poland and we went to Krakow, and Old Town was beautiful. You know, the greenery that surrounds it is really nice. There was the ease of public transportation.
So then, can you think of an experience you've had in your career that really stands out, like something memorable?
My first day of work in London was our official 4th of July party. And for those who are not familiar, in the Foreign Service or with the State Department, our biggest representational event of the year is our Independence Day reception. So in the UK, you know, the theme was like vintage America.
Cool.
And they got Duran Duran to
Oh
perform.
my gosh, that's it. Yeah, that is so rad. That's so rad.
And so, like, you know, my first day as an assistant cultural affairs officer in London, I was going to a Duran Duran concert with some of our greatest, closest contacts. And so it was a great opportunity for me to, you know, meet everyone because I was a new person in town. But it was also fun to share in like this international rock band group that everyone knows. And
that's so funny. Well, do you have any final words of wisdom or anything else you'd like to share?
I would just say that if you're interested in a career in the Foreign Service or in any of the agencies that have Foreign Service officers, I say go for it. And, you know, you never know the impact that you personally will have on someone, you know, halfway around the world, you know. A moment that I think is really sweet and that I probably would pick to share is that, you know, for most of our assignments, we have to learn the host country's language. So, for example, I've learned Armenian, and I speak it here. And in promotion of our Fulbright exchange program, I did like a 3-minute video all in Armenian, promoting Fulbright and explaining how to apply. And I thought, like, man, do I look like super nerdy on this video. And, you know, my pronunciation was off and it wasn't perfect. And I was so nervous and worried about it. But I went to a bakery in Gyumri, which is Armenia's second largest city. And one of the ladies in there said, "I know you."
Oh.
And I said, "Oh, I don't believe we've met before." And she goes, "No, I know you from Facebook." And I'm like, "You know me from Facebook?" And she's like, "Yeah, you were doing a video on Fulbright in Armenian. Your Armenian's great."
Oh, that's so sweet.
And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I saw it, and I didn't know about the program. And, you know, I'm applying, and I shared it with my friends.
Gosh.
And we're applying, and we hope that we could get this opportunity. And I was just like, oh my God, here I
That's
was
amazing.
worried about like my pronunciation and, you know, saying everything perfectly. But like, it's the little things that you do in
Yeah.
promotion of USG programs
Yeah.
and opportunities. You never know what impact that's going to have on someone.
amazing.
And, you know, if that young lady or any of her friends gets this opportunity to go on the Fulbright, you know, exchange program, like that 3 minutes of me feeling like, oh, that's not the best, you know, really helps someone out. And so you never know what you're going to do in this job, in this lifestyle that's going to impact someone positively. And so you should just go for it and don't worry about it. It'll all work out.
I love that. Those are brilliant words.
Oh, thanks.
And thank you so much, Erica, for taking the time to talk with me. And thanks everyone for listening. And please subscribe and leave comments, questions that you may have, and know that you are on your way.